Hello everyone, my name is Josh and welcome to WHIMS. And today I'm going to give you my review for The Substance, which was written, directed and edited and produced by Coralie Fargette, who is a French director. This isn't her debut film. She did a revenge thriller called Revenge, and that received a lot of praise back when it was first released at the Cannes Film Festival. But this particular film won the award for Best Screenplay at Cannes, and it's since then gotten a lot of buzz. There's even since been Oscar buzz about this film, and it's rightly deserved. So The Substance tells the story of fading starlet by the name of Elizabeth Sparkle, who at the very beginning of the film we basically see the creation of her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And at first it's very celebrated, but then through a very well edited montage, we see that it starts off to get very celebrated, but then with time, things start to happen to it. It starts to fade, it starts to crack, and it starts to crumble. And there's even a moment where a guy drops his lunch on it accidentally. And that entire moment went on a little thing that just really bothered me about people in general, where people just do stupid things. And it's like, well, what do you expect? If you're going to do stupid things like leave your burger box open, then you're just expecting it to just roll out and fall onto the ground like that. But yeah, part of me just felt like, well, if you're going to leave your lunchbox open, then it's going to fall out. But that was just a little thing that bothered me. But yeah, this very well edited sequence pretty much tells you everything you need to know about what the film is going to do, about the passage of time and things like that, in a very intelligent way. And Coralie Fargette, even though this is only her first film, I found myself going, she's kind of like the French Emerald Fennell, where I only saw her second film, but the second I saw, films like Saltburn, I was immediately, thinking to myself, this is a director who is going to really make a name for herself in the industry. And the fact that, she won Best Screenplay for her film, Promising Young Woman, really goes to show that. And it is a good screenplay. It's very well written, it's very funny, it's very thought-provoking, it's very sharp in regards to its take on feminism and how all these things, sort of come together, and how you feel pressured in certain ways to be a certain way. It is a very good double feature. I think Emerald, All the Fennells, A Promising Young Woman, and The Substance are very great double features, because I feel like they deal with the very similar themes, but they don't feel too preachy, which I really like. I like the fact that she does, both Emerald Fennell and Coralie Fargette do a very good job of kind of telling these very intimate stories, and they are expressing a message, and they are expressing an idea, but they're not doing it in a very preachy way where you feel like they're pausing the film just to have the characters turn to the camera and literally sit on a chair or sit on a soapbox and say, this is what's happening in the world now, we need to make sure it changes. They explore it through a fable, they explore it through a story. And what Coralie Fargette does in this film is she basically explores the idea about the Hollywood industry and what its standards are on youth, beauty, and maintaining someone's youth and beauty and image through very impossible means. Because the main character of Elizabeth Sparkle, played by Demi Moore in a career best performance, really does feel like her star is literally fading, because when she's out to dinner with one of her executive friends, Harvey, played by a very despicable Dennis Quaid. Dennis Quaid is a lovely person, but the character he plays in this is utterly despicable. He plays a guy called Harvey, who's an executive at this sort of fitness studio where they produce workout videos and things like that. He basically fires her on her 50th birthday, and there's this very disgusting sequence where he is indulging in shrimp, and I kind of found myself thinking, I do not want to eat a single bit of shrimp in my life after watching this sequence, because it is absolutely disgusting, and I found myself going, oh, I literally don't want to be anywhere near this person. He feels like a walking STD almost, and it's really kind of disgusting, really awful. But you really do feel sorry for Demi Moore's character of Elizabeth Sparkle, because she is someone who is literally being blamed for something that she can't control, which is aging, and the idea that once she reaches 50, they have this idea in Hollywood where once you reach 50, your star immediately fades and your sparkle just vanishes. And she takes this to heart, and she, after narrowly avoiding a car accident, which is near fatal, she ends up going to the hospital, and one of the orderlies, or one of the interns, slips her a USB stick, which has the words "The Substance," and a little note saying it changed my life. So when she plugs in the USB, she's greeted to a special info film where it basically says, have you ever imagined a younger, more youthful and more, beautiful version of yourself? Well, now you can with a simple injection. You are the Matrix, and with a simple injection, you can basically, it redefines and replicates your cellular structure to the point where you can actually split yourself in two, and you can indulge in a younger version of yourself. But this particular process has a price, because when you are indulging your younger self, you can only be your younger self for a brief period of about 7 days. And while you are indulging in this very kind of, recapturing your youth kind of self, you also have to look after your old self, because your old self is pretty much in a comatose state, and you need to keep the older self, your older version of yourself, incubated, and you need to essentially feed them intravenously. You need to feed them special fluids intravenously for about 7 days, and if you break the 7 days, consequences will ensue. And if you go beyond the 7 days, you need to do what's called a stabilization injection, which is where you drain fluid from your old self and you have to inject it into your younger self in order to maintain the youthful appearance of your younger self and to stop them from collapsing or anything like that. And you have to basically do this, otherwise if your younger self, say, decides to overindulge beyond the 7-day timeline, the stabilization fluid just runs out, and you have to maintain the balance effectively. That's what the video says. So when she indulges in this injection, it's a very gory set piece where a alternate version of herself is literally born through her back, and this particular new version is called Sue, and she immediately, upon being born, she sews up the old wound of Elizabeth Sparkle's character, and she immediately goes and gets a job at the fitness studio where she used to work, and she becomes Sue. And everyone, Harvey the executive, Dennis Quaid, absolutely love her and says, you're the new face of this industry and you're going to be wonderful, everyone's going to love you, you're going to be amazing. And she's like smiling and going, oh yeah, it's going to be great, like I'm now young again and I can do aerobics and things like that. And it's all very wonderful to start with, but then very slowly Sue begins to get a little bit of agency, and she enjoys being alive, she enjoys being youthful, and she starts to go over the limit. She starts to get more, stabilization fluid. But what's happening to her older body? Well, her older body is starting to age, and her older body is starting to decay. And so when Demi Moore comes back from, being the younger version of herself, she's actually quite furious, understandably, because her actual body starts to decay. Her hair starts to go grey, there's wrinkles on her skin, like visible wrinkles, like really noticeable wrinkles, like lines under her eyes. And it's really heartbreaking to watch. And I really did feel sorry for Demi Moore's character in this, because you really do feel... You really do feel like you're in her shoes, where you do feel like you are yourself aging as you're watching this character progress, and you do see the desperation, you do see the fact that she is trying to be different and she is trying to be new. But what's really ridiculous is that this is what the studios do. This is what Hollywood does to women of a certain age. Like they literally say, like, as soon as you reach 50, you immediately start to lose that sparkle, and something just disappears. And she even goes to Harvey when they have that conversation, like, what disappears? And he doesn't have a word for it. He can't say what that is, because he himself doesn't know. And what I think is very important is there's this really wonderful scene in this film, which is way better than any of the body horror stuff. Like, yes, the body horror stuff is great, and it's really wonderful for horror fans and gore fans. But I think that the most powerful scene in this film is when Demi Moore decides to hook up with an old boyfriend. And she's going on this date, and she's very confident, and she says to herself, I want to live, I want to go out there and be Elizabeth Sparkle, and just enjoy being me, enjoy growing old, and enjoy the autumn of my years. And she has this moment where she's got herself dressed up, she's got her makeup on, she's got her lipstick, she's got her mascara wand, and she looks really lovely, that she's, straightening her hair and things like that. And she looks lovely, and then she's looking in the mirror, and she's like going, you can just tell by the look on her face that she doesn't feel beautiful. She doesn't feel confident in her, appearance. So she starts to, take off her dress, and she puts on another dress, but she's still not happy, and she keeps going back, and she keeps putting on more mascara, she keeps putting on more lipstick, she keeps putting on more lip gloss, and she's going through it like it goes on trees. And it's really heartbreaking to watch, because you can really see that she's trying to put herself together, but there's just literally this moment where she just literally grabs the lipstick and she starts smearing it all over her face, and she starts smacking herself. And I literally was on the verge of tears when I was watching that scene. Now, that's a horrible thing to go through. Like, when you're someone like that and you literally are dealing with the fact that you're growing old, and this is the industry. This is what the industry is ingrained in someone's mind, where you get to a certain age and you're immediately past your good date. And that's ridiculous, because anyone of any age, any person, regardless of your gender, you are always going to be special, and you're always going to have this certain sense of you're always going to have this certain sense that you are amazing, and you are wonderful, and you are lovely, and you are beautiful. But creating an expiration date for a person, especially a person when it comes to a certain age, it's impossible to put an expiration date on someone, because that immediately dehumanizes them and it turns them into a product rather than a person. And that's just really dehumanizing. And I wish the Hollywood industry understood that when you basically put an expiration date and you say, well, when you get past 50, you immediately lose your youthfulness. And that's really dehumanizing, because you don't turn that person into a person anymore. They're a product, and they're something to be distributed and to sell en masse, and that's just impossible. And there's this moment where I found myself going, there's this moment where everyone's clapping Elizabeth Sparkle, and they're going, oh, you're amazing, you're irreplaceable, you are, and things like that. And I literally felt like saying, you're irreplaceable, my arse, because the minute she walks out of the office and she's now Elizabeth Sparkle, her manager is literally saying, we want to get a new Elizabeth Sparkle. We want someone younger, we want someone fitter, we want someone who can really, show people how it's done. And I'm thinking to myself, you hypocrites, like, you literally just said to her, you're irreplaceable, you are, but then the second her back's turned, they're like going, we need to get a new one, we need to get a new Elizabeth Sparkle, we need to get someone youthful, we need to get someone, really, who's really going to show us how it's done. But I found myself thinking, I wanted to literally say as her, like, as Elizabeth Sparkle, I thought, how would you feel if someone said that to you? Like, you're no longer youthful for this company. How would you feel if someone younger turned around to you and say to you, you're old and you're starting to really lose your sparkle, you're really starting to lose your charm? How would you feel if someone turned around to you and said that? But because that's what people would do now. But I was very heartbroken for Elizabeth Sparkle, and I hated Sue. I thought Sue was a total bitch, and I felt like she was really disrespectful. She kept calling her old and, very withered and very, ancient. I just felt like if this particular character existed, and if she actually had the life cycle that Elizabeth Sparkle had, where she actually could age from one year to the next, she wouldn't be so flippant about calling her old and decrepit and all these other things. Like, she was very disrespectful. And like Regina George in Mean Girls, I couldn't wait to see the moment where she finally got a comeuppance. Like that moment in Mean Girls where she gets run over by the bus, I thought, yeah, that's actually really fitting that she would have that happen to her. Yes, that's kind of cruel that she gets hit by the bus, but part of me felt like that was so satisfying seeing that happen. And it's kind of the same when Sue kind of gets that moment where she gets that bit of comeuppance, because I did feel like, oh yeah, you deserve this, like you deserve every ounce of bad luck that comes your way. And it does feel very satisfying, but you do kind of feel kind of sad. And what I thought was very interesting, before I forget, there's this very interesting thing where when she talks to the person who owns the substance, it's kind of like this disembodied voice where you don't really quite know who he is or what he looks like. You just hear his voice, and he basically says, whenever Demi Moore or whenever Sue calls him up, they always go, oh my god, I really hate this right now. Like, she is really kind of getting on my nerves. She's just sitting there stuffing her face in front of the TV whilst I'm, out comatose in a corner. And it's like she's stuffing her face with food and things like that. And it's really, getting on my nerves because it's backing up into me. And he goes, "There is no she and there is no he. It is only you. There is only you." And it's like, that's very interesting because it really does kind of almost turn it into a very Jekyll and Hyde type story, or a picture of Dorian Gray type setup where there is no other person. It's just you, another version of you. And that's very interesting because it really kind of tells you, it really does force you to kind of almost confront this idea that there's this line in one of my favourite William Blake poems called London, in which he uses the phrase, "the mind-forged manacles appear." And what the mind-forged manacles are is, it's basically, you are literally conditioning yourself to believe that you are in a very limited, you have very limited time, and you have very limited resources and very limited ideas about where you want to go and what you're conditioned to do. And that's kind of the same with a lot of women of a certain age. Like, they do often blame, youth and time on themselves. That when they do often, feel like they're being put in a position, they do often blame other people. They blame other women, they blame other, people in the industry, but they don't blame the real people who give those instructions to them, like the people like Harvey, where they're literally telling them that you'll pass your due-by date when you get to a certain age. And I think that kind of reflects, that kind of almost, gets reflected onto other women. And I think when she starts having a go at her younger self, when she watches her younger self on a talk show, she goes, "You little bitch, like you'll be nothing without me," and things like that. And it's like, that's literally what a lot of women probably feel inside, that they literally feel like, you would be nothing without me, that I created you, or something like that. And it really is very well done, and it really does hold a mirror up to the women who get almost bamboozled into thinking badly about themselves and almost degrading themselves in that way. And it's very well done. It's a very interesting character study and a very interesting psychological study on what women put on themselves. And part of it is to do with the studio, but part of it is very mind forged as well, very much mind created. And it's just something to say that, look, you can blame the studio, you can blame all sorts of people as well, but some part of you has to also say that this is also a part of you. This is a part of what you've created for yourself. And it's very well done. It's very intelligently thought out. And it does make you think. And I think horror films that make you think are just as good as films that just deliver the goods as well. And I think that's something that's very important. And I think Coralie Forget does a very good job, or Fargette does a very good job of doing the very George A. Romero thing, where his films, you could very easily look at it on a very surface level as it's a very fun body horror type film with something to say underneath. But what's very interesting is the stuff underneath is a part of why the film exists. Like George A. Romero films, his zombie trilogy are about the changing decades and how things are changing as we're getting deeper into the decades. Like the first George A. Romero Dead film is about, the paranoia we have about the nuclear bomb, and it's also about, there's a little bit of a commentary on racism, about the idea that even though the world's falling apart, they can't look past what society and what the masses at large have ingrained in our minds when it comes to racism, and then when it comes to all these other things. So there's a lot of commentary about racism, but there's also commentary about paranoia and how old world views will never change even when the apocalypse is going on. And that's very intelligently done. But then of course you get Dawn of the Dead, which is, you could almost say it's a commentary on consumerism, about how zombies will go back to the places that we already were in. But then Day of the Dead is also a commentary about, how we are constantly at war with ourselves, and we'll always look for someone to blame, like always the government or the military or something like that. We'll always look for an outside source, even though we mainly have to wrestle with the conflict within ourselves. And that's what The Substance does. The Substance basically says, well, at some point you're going to have to look into the mirror, because that's when you really will be confronted with the creature touching a frame of polished glass, as H.P. Lovecraft said in his final line of The Outsider. And there is a bit of that. There is a bit of a reference to The Outsider, H.P. Lovecraft's The Outsider as well, when the main character looks at herself and she literally looks like a very decaying and very hunchbacked husk. And that's very intelligent. And I feel like there is a lot of references to Stanley Kubrick as well in this film. And I feel like the big, reference is when she goes to the fitness studio, and whenever she walks in, there's kind of like this carpeted floor that has the same patterns as the Overlook Hotel, and there's almost like, the Golden Room, elevator music as well that often plays when, she goes into the hallway and things like that. And it really does give you that very Kubrickian The Shining feel. And I thought, I'm just tired of seeing references to The Shining. Like, I get it, it's a good film, but part of me just feels like constantly making reference to it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good film. But in this case, I can let it pass because that's very well implemented. But I feel like there's a lot of references to Stanley Kubrick. Like, say, for example, there's a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey when Elizabeth Spark was transforming into a youthful self or breaking away. It's always described as when the camera zooms into a pupil and you just sort of see the spectrum of colours. It's very kind of like when Dave Bowden goes into the Stargate and he just sort of sees all those colours, and it's constantly, jumping back to his reaction, and he's just horrified because he's just being overly stimulated with all these colours and all these outlandish shapes. And it really does create a very nightmarish scenario of what it means to feel like you're losing control of your body. It takes a very kind of physical thing that we've often seen in a very physical sense and kind of internalizes it, and it does it so well. And I feel like this film is very intelligently written. It's very funny in places as well, like that climax where she basically goes out into, as Sue, she's murdered her old spoiler alert, by the way. She's sort of, she's determined to go and do this New Year's Eve party that she's being propositioned to do by Harvey. And she goes out and she's got that blue dress on. And then all of a sudden she starts to destabilise, shall we say. And she starts to lose all sorts of things like her teeth. She starts to lose all her, she starts to lose her teeth. Her fingernail is being peeled back. And it's really horrific, like a really horrific image. And then you're just kind of thinking to yourself, this is horrible. But also, I couldn't help but saying, there you go. Like, this is what happens when you start to get a little bit too big for your boots. And this is what, happens when you lose control. You begin to, panic and start to go, oh my God, what's happening to me? But then I thought, it's your own fault because you killed your one vessel into maintaining this beautiful visage. Now you've lost it, you're starting to decay, you're starting to lose your agency. And I thought that was really funny. But then also, when she tries to use the substance again, and one thing I will say about the substance, you can only use it once. So when Sue tries to regenerate the substance program, she begins to transform, and she isn't just transforming, she gives birth to another version of herself, but this time this other version of herself is also very horrific. Like I said, it has a very strong reference to The Outsider, H.P. Lovecraft's The Outsider, with the creature touching the mirror and realising that it's a piece of polished glass, or touching the visage of the creature but then realising that it's just a frame of polished glass, meaning that it's a mirror. It's such a very well thought out visual, but at the same time I really just felt like, yeah, this is what you get. But then there's this entire climax where she goes to the event and she starts to, get a, fake version of her old face, and she just plasters it on herself and gets the lipstick out. And it's very funny, but then also at the same time, people are just reacting to her as if, oh, there you are, that we've been waiting ages for you. Like, come on stage quickly. And then when she shows up on stage, it's like they don't know it's her until the mask falls off, and it's like, that's really funny. It's kind of like a very it's a very Superman style gimmick where what's the difference between Clark Kent and Superman? Like, oh, his glasses and his hair and things like that. When his glasses falls off, he's completely exposed, but when he puts his glasses on, it's like, oh, he's Clark Kent again. It's like that's really funny. So I thought that was really hilarious. But then also at the same time, the look of disgust and the look of horror on all the people's faces, I burst out laughing. Like I literally had to cover my mouth because I was laughing so much during that moment. Like, I thought the look of horror on everyone's faces, I thought, well, what did you expect? You wanted this character to change and be beautiful, and the things that you made her go through in order to do it, and now she's fully embraced that she's now aging. She's embracing the inevitability of age. And then all of a sudden people just scream and call her a freak and call her a monster. And there's this really, wonderful bloodbath where someone just cuts her head off with an axe, but then it just grows back. And it's like, my god, it was a bloodbath and it was absolutely glorious, and I found myself laughing, but I was also very sad for Elizabeth as well, because she obviously it took a lot of courage to do what she did, where she just basically looked like a very deformed husk, but she still put on the dress and she still made her way to the studio, like limping along literally, like you could hear the thudding of her extra foot as she was like being, as she was like making her way to the studio. And it's really heartbreaking to watch, but you really do find yourself going, I respect you for at least taking the courage to come out and say, look, I'm aging and I'm literally decaying as we speak, but I'm still going to come out here and I'm going to still show you my best self and to not be afraid. But everyone still called her a freak and said, death to the freak, shoot the freak. And I'm like, but mad respect to her, because she really does go there, and I really do think that was really brave. And this film is just bravery personified, because honestly, Demi Moore is a fantastic actress and she gives some of her best work in this film. The scenes where, that scene alone, where she's in the mirror and she's literally just looking at herself and putting on the makeup and literally taking off her clothes and literally, putting back on other clothes and making herself look beautiful for her date, that moment deserves an Oscar alone, because she doesn't go over the top with it. She really does depict what is going on internally in a lot of women's heads when they look at themselves in the mirror and they think to themselves, do I look beautiful? Do I look satisfied? People could tell you until you're blue in the face that you're beautiful, but you do not feel it inside, and it's very heartbreaking. And that moment deserves an Oscar alone. That film, that moment deserves Oscar buzz. She deserves an Oscar, and if she doesn't get an Oscar, I am literally going to write a letter to the Academy saying, what the hell were you guys thinking? This film is literally an incredible demonstration of what it's like, literally holding a mirror up to Hollywood and saying, this is what you're doing to these women and you need to stop. This needs to stop, and we need to understand that there is no expiration date on a human being when it comes to aging and things like that. You can't treat people like they're a product. You need to treat them like they're a human being. This film gives an absolute middle finger to all those Hollywood executives who think they can play God with people's appearances and say, look, we know that you're great, but then as soon as you reach 50, your time is done. There is no such thing. And what I really like, before I sign off on this video because it's getting quite long, what I really like on this video, this film, is that Demi Moore did an interview where she basically said she's 61, and what she felt that this was a very personal project for her, because she felt like she was also getting very worried that she herself was aging, and she was past that almost self-ingrained or self-conditioned sense of once you reach your 60s, you're immediately done. But what's really wonderful is that Demi Moore basically says, I look at turning 60 as a very exciting time for me, because I'm now a grandmother and I now, have these wonderful grown-up children, and I'm in love with my husband. I'm as in love with my husband as I ever was before. She's married to Bruce Willis, and they just show these really wonderful photographs of her and her husband, her and her grandchildren, her holding her grandbaby, and I just really thought that's really lovely, and I actually got very tearful. Like, I actually found myself going, oh, that's really lovely that she sees it as something that's exciting, and she literally tells her daughters, don't look at this as having an expiration date, don't look at your youth and your power and your magic as don't look at this as having an ending. Don't look at, when you go to Hollywood or any of these places, don't look at yourself and think, oh, I have an ending, I have to take care of myself, because you are going to have you are going to have an ending in one sense, but then you're also going to have sort of like a resurgence, or you're going to have a sort of it almost feels like a reawakening, or you starting a new chapter in your life. You should always think to yourself that things can only get better from here. And even though you might be reaching the autumn of your years, there's still much excitement to be had. And that I thought was very empowering. And I literally got teary-eyed when I was watching that interview. Like, I thought, I absolutely love Demi Moore, because she really does show that there is something to be excited for when you reach that point in your life, when you feel like you're getting older and you feel like there's all these things to do. Because the only thing that will matter to you in the end is that you have a family and you have people that love you and you have people that really do. I'm about to make myself cry literally saying this part, but I literally found it so empowering that she literally just looked at her children and she looked at her adorable grandchildren and she literally said, I have something to look forward to. It's so exciting. Oh my God. But I really did love that, and I found myself going, I really did feel really moved, and it was really wonderful, and I just felt like I felt sorry for her character in this film because she has no one. She has no one to look forward to. She has no one to look forward to the autumn of her years with. She has no one to look forward to. Even when she does go on this date, or when she's trying to go on this date with this other guy, she constantly is looking at herself in the mirror and she doesn't feel beautiful because she's been working on this very um, this very strong belief that she will literally lose her beauty. But here's the thing, she doesn't have any family, she doesn't have any friends, she doesn't have anyone to connect to, and it really does feel heartbreaking to watch. So I feel like even if you don't totally buy into the horror of it all, and you don't buy into, you know, the you know, the story that's trying to tell, I think you should go into this film just for Demi Moore's performance because she really does a good job, and she doesn't have these very big outlandish reactions to things, but when she does, and when she does have these moments where she's just looking at people, you can tell. There's this wonderful moment where she's just looking at Harvey when he presents her with a present and she's going, oh, we wanted to give you a parting gift for your retirement, and we saw it and we immediately thought of you. You can literally look. She gives him this look, like says, "You're so full of shit, Harvey. Like, really, you're gonna tell me that you were thinking of me?" But like I said, and I'm gonna leave this as a quote for the video. When people say you're irreplaceable, like you're stunning, you're irreplaceable, I want to just say I'm irreplaceable. You're irreplaceable, my ass. Like the second you fired her, you're immediately saying we need another, you know, there's a sparkle, we need another woman that's like her, more youthful, more beautiful. And it's like, shove it up your ass. Like whenever you say things like, oh, you know, you're irreplaceable, you are, bullshit. You're just gonna wait until I get older and then you're gonna get some other, you know, young thing to, you know, replace me. And it's just really annoying. And I just found myself going, I totally related to this character, and I found myself going, good for you, girl. You really showed them when you stood out in front of that stage, looking like something out of Basket Case, like Frank Henenlofer's Basket Case, like, you know, just trying to speak even though your voice is kind of muffled. But you literally showed them that, yeah, I'm not ashamed of getting older. I'm not ashamed of getting older. And it's a really beautiful moment, even though it is gory. And I found myself going, this film is so gory, it could make films like The Fly and Brain Dead by Peter Jackson. It could give those films a run for its money. It's so gory. But it was very empowering as well. And I found that this was a much more empowering feminist film than the Barbie movie was, because it felt like it treated the subject very realistically, and it didn't just say all men are toxic, all men are bad. It literally just said, yes, the men, the executives, Dennis Quaid's character Harvey, are all toxic and they're all horrible. But what's really wonderful is it really does hold a mirror up to the women who are being kind of who are having these moments where they start to doubt their ability. They're starting to doubt their attractiveness, and whether they will have the same allure as they had when they were youthful, and all these things. It literally holds a mirror up to them and says, look, is this all just them, or is it the mind-forged manacles again? Is it that? And I thought it was very well done, and it's a really good film, and it's really empowering, and I just really found myself really enjoying it. So if nothing else, you should really go to this film for Demi Moore's performance, but I really do think you should go to it for the film and the gore, and it's a really good body horror movie as well. And it really is a brave movie to do because it's really wonderful. And I'm sorry to have gone on long like this, but I really enjoyed this film and I would highly recommend it. I would give it a 5-star review. It's really wonderful, and I cannot wait to see what Collier Fargette does next. She's a fantastic director, and she's a very brave director as well, because no director would have ever made this. I don't even think Emerald Fennell or any of these other directors would have even gone so far as this. But I really like the fact that there are really good feminist directors who are really telling very, very relatable, very strong stories about what it means to be a woman in this day and age, what it means to, you know, really have these sorts of ideas. And as a cisgender gay man, I really do feel that this film is a really intelligent depiction of what it means to be a woman in this time of life, and it really is well done. So I would really highly recommend it as, you know, the film that it is. But it's a really well done film, and I would highly recommend people do it. So that's been my review for The Substance. I hope you really all enjoyed this video, And I hope you had a very good day. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos, please subscribe today. And what did you think of the substance? Let me know what you thought of this film in the comments. I hope you're having a very good day. Take care. Bye-bye for now.